What's up, guys? In today's video, I'm gonna give you some tips for buying your first home, as well as motivational techniques to use when it comes to saving that down payment. First, remember that it's okay to feel scared, nervous, or just plain not ready at all. When I went to buy my first home, I was not feeling prepared, and it felt like something that I would do way later. But fortunately, my daughter's grandma, she's a realtor, and she really encouraged me to think about buying. And I'm really glad she did, because it allowed me to build up some equity instead of paying rent for so long. And I really wouldn't have done it. I didn't grow up in a situation where we were homeowners. All of that was a foreign concept to me, really. Being a homeowner, it just really wasn't even on my radar. But when my daughter's grandma, my realtor, put it on my mind, she really started to help me think through the process. And that's what I'm gonna encourage you to do first, is to think backwards, like work your way through the worst case scenario if you do buy, and just ask yourself what's holding you back. For me, it just felt like you have to be really, really stable or have a ton of money saved up. And I wasn't at that point. I was 28 years old, but it just felt like at that time, honestly, I was pretty immature, I think. She helped me to think through the negative consequences, I guess, of home ownership. Like, what if you lose your job and you don't have a ton of money saved up? So what she told me then was, well, you have to pay your rent anyways at your apartment, and if you miss your rent by a few days, they're gonna be putting an eviction notice on your door really quick. And with a home, it's not that simple. They can't just slap an eviction notice on your door if you don't pay your rent. It's a much longer, more complicated process, which gives you plenty of time, if you did get behind or something, to get that mortgage paid. Of course, you don't want to be late on your mortgage or anything like that, but just like think through these things and the fears that you have, and really ask yourself, okay, well, what if that happened? What if that happened? And is it really that bad? And is it worse than your current situation? If all of a sudden you lost your job and you are renting, you've got to figure something out, just like you would if you were a homeowner. The next thing I want you to do is to add up all of the rent that you pay every month for as long as you've been paying, and as far as you plan on paying. So if you've been in your place for a couple of years and see a couple of more years ahead of you, so that's 4 years, add that up. How much rent are you paying to your landlord to help them pay off their mortgage? And remember, all that money is going to fund someone else's retirement, when instead it can go to money in your bank, in your pocket, and towards your retirement. So then I want you to think of that money coming in and funding your own goals and dreams instead of going to fund someone else's. Now, after crossing off some of those mental hurdles that are really the first and worst barriers to becoming a homeowner, then we can start getting into the logistics. And the first thing you're gonna need to do is figure out, how much do you even need to buy a home? It could be a lot less than you actually think, and I know that was the case for me, because you always hear you need 10% or 20% to put as a down payment. I know that's not true all the time. So it's best to talk with a realtor or a mortgage broker or both, and have them run your numbers for you and see, how much do you need to save to buy your first home? For me, I bought a $100,000 home and I needed $6,000 to put as a down payment for that home. So going back to me not even feeling ready, I literally had to take that money out of my 401k. That's all the money, or the great majority of the money that I had saved up. I probably had maybe $1,000 outside of that, but I used my 401k money to pay for my down payment. That's not the smartest thing to do, and you really shouldn't do it if you have other alternatives. But if it's the only money to your name, it might be worth at least considering using that as an option, because then you could really start to build some equity in something you own, instead of just delaying and delaying the process and building up your landlord's net worth. Also, find out what programs you qualify for, whether it's the first-time home buyer. Sometimes that's a good program for people, sometimes it's not. So find that out, because once you get the number of what you actually need, then it's just a matter of being creative and doing simple math to try to figure out where this money is going to come from to buy your home. Next, I want you to look at your budget and your bills, your expenses, see how much money you have left over at the end of the month after you pay for everything. Then with this number, see how much of that you can dedicate towards saving for your down payment. If you need $10,000, then you're gonna say, okay, well, I have this number left over after every paycheck. Divide that out and see how long it's gonna take you to save up that lump sum. And if it's a lot longer than you'd like, then you really have to get creative with your budget. See where you can make some cuts and some changes. Maybe you can get a roommate. Maybe you can sell your car. And take a look at this video if you do need help getting out of a car that maybe is eating up too much of your budget. Maybe put in some extra hours at work or find a second job. And if you do that, then you could take 100% of that money and dedicate it all towards this goal that you have to expedite that process of saving that down payment. So the goal with this is to actually know a date and time that you will be able to become a homeowner, because then it's just working towards that, and it's really nice to have that to look forward to and know that it's happening. It might not be happening right now, but because you are taking the time to actually calculate, save, and plan for the event to happen of buying a home, you'll get there. You'll actually be able to buy a home, and you'll know when you'll be able to buy a home. Of course, if your finances change between now and then, it'll just get you there that much sooner. But at least if you start out with how much you need, how long is it gonna take to save that, then you can put a date on your calendar and look forward to that. Another thing to keep in mind when you do start house shopping is you might not get the exact house you want. You might not get anything near what you imagine, because houses are expensive. And if you're a first-time home buyer and your budget isn't very large, you're gonna be pretty limited in what you can afford. And unfortunately, there's a lot of houses that really need some love and care. So when you're house shopping, I want you to put on your creativity hat and your rose-colored glasses and go into home buying with the thought process of, what can I do to fix this up, to make it beautiful, to make it something that I love, whether it's just refreshing the paint, adding in some decor. Homes look very strange when they have none of our personalities in them. It can feel very weird to be in someone else's space. So you really have to think differently when you are house shopping and think of its potential versus just what you're seeing right now. And I just moved into our second home. Well, this is my husband and I's first home together. So this is our new office. It's all black. I'll give you a tour at some point, or if you're following me on Instagram, I have done some sneak peeks, but we're currently kind of just making it our own. And I really wanted to have a black office. I thought that would be so awesome, and it's coming out really great. So be sure to check me out there if you do want more of that insider's perspective. Not that it's that interesting, but hey, you know, it's part of my life. And I do primarily share some money tips over there. Anyway, the first home that you buy might not be your dream home, but it'll be a great start to get you towards your dream home. And remember that it's not a permanent decision. Just because you're getting a 30-year mortgage doesn't mean you're gonna be in that house for 30 years. You may only be in it for a couple of years. For my first home, I lived in it 1 year by myself, then I had a roommate for 1 year, then my husband moved in with me, he was my boyfriend at the time, for a year, and then we moved out together into an apartment, and I rented out my home for the following 2 years after that. So I owned it for 5 years, and I sold it at the end of that time frame, which I bought it for $100,000 and I sold it for $160,000, which was amazing because I just was able to put $60,000 in my bank account, and that's crazy. That's like the most amount of money that I had ever had at that time, and it was awesome to really see that in my bank account and just think like, oh my gosh, if I didn't buy a home, I would have just paid all that money to somebody else. So that's why I'm really passionate about this subject and helping other people do the same too, because it's just incredible. And it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes your home doesn't appreciate, sometimes it takes longer, but I could have continued to rent it out and that would have been fine too. But what I'm saying is that first home wasn't my forever home. It was my first home. It was my starter home. It definitely gave me a great home buying experience, like a homeowner experience. And then now we're in our second home together and it's just so amazing. It's nice when you own it because you can make all these changes, do whatever you want. It's your space. And for my first home, I feel like I basically lived for free. I'm gonna do another video breaking down all the numbers and all that, so be sure to subscribe if you're new here and you'll have some insight on that because it's pretty incredible how that all works out when you are buying versus renting. That's all I really have for today, so I just wanna encourage you to at least look into buying a house, see what the numbers would cost because it really is something that you can do and I wanna see you get there. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.